I'm Jeremy Williams, and this is Amiri Williams.
I'm Tiara Williams.
At just 21 years old, Tierra Neia Williams seemed to have it all. A thriving entrepreneur, a devoted mother, and a loving wife, she was a beacon of success and ambition. She had built her daycare business from the ground up, creating a nurturing environment that was beloved by the families she served. Her 10-month-old daughter, Amiri, was the light of her life, and her family and friends admired her for her dedication, hard work, and unwavering love. Tiara was not just an entrepreneur. She was a woman who deeply cared about her community, her family, and her future. But on the morning of June 5, 2022, in the small town of Franklin, Kentucky, everything changed in an instant. In the quiet hours before dawn, neighbors on Patton Road were abruptly awakened by the sound of gunshots ringing out. The peaceful morning was shattered, and what would unfold would leave an entire community in shock and disbelief. By 6:30 a.m., when police arrived at the scene, they were met with a tragedy that would forever alter the lives of those who knew Tiara. Inside her home, Tiara Williams was found lifeless, shot multiple times by her husband, Jeremy Williams. What was once a picture-perfect marriage filled with love and shared dreams had descended into a devastating tragedy. Driven by deep-seated jealousy over Tiara's success and fueled by his own insecurities, Jeremy made a decision that would have irreversible consequences. After taking the life of the woman he was meant to love and support, he fled the scene, leaving behind a broken family and a destroyed future. Hours later, Jeremy's life would come to a tragic end on Interstate 65, where he was found dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, his life also claimed by the very jealousy that had torn his family apart. This isn't just another headline, it's the story of how unchecked jealousy, insecurities, and entitlement can rip apart lives in the blink of an eye. Tiara's life, filled with promise, ambition, and love, was tragically cut short by the man who should have been her greatest ally. This is the story of a woman who worked tirelessly, loved unconditionally, and deserved far more than what fate had in store for her. A story about the dangers of emotional manipulation, possessiveness, and the dark side of human relationships. In this documentary, we'll take a closer look at Tiara's life and the events that led to her untimely death. But this is more than just a single tragedy. Tiara's story is a heartbreaking reflection of a much larger issue, one that affects countless lives every year. We'll uncover warning signs that often go unnoticed, signs that can be the difference between life and death. Together we'll learn the vital lessons that could help prevent future tragedies like this one, and hopefully save lives in the process. Before we continue with Tiara's story, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This channel is dedicated to bringing you important stories that need to be heard, and your support helps us reach more people who might benefit from these crucial conversations. So please like this video and share to your contacts and groups. If you've ever witnessed controlling behavior in a relationship, whether in your own life or someone else's, share your experience in the comments below. What warning signs did you notice? Your insight could help others recognize similar patterns in their own lives. Now let's delve into Tiara's early life and discover how a young woman from Lexington, Kentucky, built her dreams into reality, only to have them shattered by jealousy and control. Tiara Neia Williams, born on August 23, 2000 in the heart of Lexington, Kentucky, was the youngest of 12 children, a girl surrounded by a chorus of voices, each offering their own version of guidance, wisdom, and love. Her parents, Terry Prince and Leisha MCC, had created a home filled with warmth and joy. Tiara's childhood was a testament to the strength and unity of family. The Williams family wasn't just a unit, it was a force, a tightly knit community that held each other up against the world. And at the center of it all was Tiara, her mother's pride, her siblings' protector, and a beacon of energy that lit up every room she entered. From a young age, Tiara stood out. Her natural leadership abilities were evident in the way she carried herself, the way she inspired those around her. She wasn't just another child in a large family, she was the one who pushed forward, the one who believed that no dream was too big. Her personality was vibrant, her presence commanding, but what made Tiara truly exceptional was her ability to balance strength with kindness. She was loved, not just by her family but by anyone who crossed her path. Friends and relatives spoke of her like she was a force of nature, someone whose light could never be dimmed, whose dreams could never be crushed. In a family of 12, each sibling had their own unique role, their own place in the world, But Tiara was a glue that held it all together. Her bond with her mother, Lakeisha, was unbreakable. They shared more than a mother-daughter relationship. They were best friends, confidants who shared everything: joy, heartache, dreams, and fears. Lakeisha often reminisced about the days when Tiara would sit by her side, talking about her goals, her future, the life she was building.
Me and my daughter had a relationship, not just a mom and daughter relationship, but we were friends, really close friends.
She wasn't just a daughter, she was an extension of Lakeisha's own heart, a living manifestation of her dreams for her family. But Tiara's connection with her siblings wasn't just limited to the bond of family. Her sister, Tiana, looked up to her not just as an older sibling but as a role model, someone whose every move was worth following.
And I honestly believe that. Like, she was sitting here for a reason. She's goofy. She jokes around a lot. I don't know. Tiara was my best friend. She was my role model, per se. I always looked up to her.
The family wasn't just a group of people living in the same house. It was a network of support, of encouragement, a unit that propelled each member to greater heights. And Tiara, with her drive and ambition, was the shining example of that upward momentum. As Tiara entered her teenage years, her extraordinary talents began to flourish. She attended Franklin Simpson High School, where she not only excelled academically but also thrived in extracurricular activities. Cheerleading, dance, track, Tiara gave it her all. No challenge was too daunting for her, no sport too difficult. She didn't just participate, she excelled. She didn't just aim for the top, she ensured she reached it. Every practice, every performance, every competition, Tiara poured herself into her work, earning admiration from her peers and coaches alike. And though she was an exceptional athlete, it wasn't just her physical prowess that set her apart. It was her relentless commitment, her work ethic that left an imprint on everyone around her. Beyond the sports fields and classrooms, Tiara's faith was the cornerstone of her identity. A deeply spiritual young woman, she was a devoted member of Harvester Warehouse Pentecostal Church in Franklin, Kentucky. Her voice, strong and full of grace, was a fixture in the praise and worship team. It wasn't just about singing hymns, it was about pouring her heart into her faith, lifting others with the strength of her spirit. Her church community loved her, not just for her voice but for the way she made people feel. She wasn't just a member of the team, she was the heart and soul of it, her passion for her faith igniting those around her. But even with all her achievements, Tiara was never one to boast. She was humble, her accomplishments never self-aggrandizing. She saw her success not as a result of luck but of hard work, dedication, and love. That was the Tiara that everyone knew, someone who didn't just strive for success for herself but who carried the weight of her entire family on her shoulders. She wasn't simply achieving for her own benefit. She was laying the groundwork for the future of everyone she loved. After graduating high school, Tiara's journey took an unexpected but not entirely surprising turn. With her sharp mind and caring nature, she initially pursued a career in dental school. It was a natural choice, a safe, stable path that aligned with her desire to help others and build a future. But even as she began her studies, Tiara's true passion began to emerge. A love for children, a deep understanding of their needs, a desire to shape their futures with care and nurturing. So, instead of following the traditional route of dental school, Tiara made a bold decision. She left her studies behind and, following her heart, founded T&J's Daycare. It wasn't just a business for Tiara, it was a calling. She saw the need for quality child care in her community, where parents were working long hours and struggling to find a safe and enriching environment for their children. She poured everything she had into the daycare, from the business logistics to the emotional energy required to create a space where children could grow, learn, and thrive. She wasn't just a business owner, she was a community builder, a woman who understood the vital role of early education and child development. Under her leadership, T&J's Daycare flourished, quickly becoming a cornerstone of the local community. Parents praised Tiara for her innovative approach to child care, for the way she made each child feel seen and loved. Her reputation as a devoted mother and an extraordinary caregiver spread, and her business grew rapidly, expanding far beyond what Tiara had ever imagined. What Tiara didn't know, though, was that this success, this thriving business that she had built with her own hands, would become the very thing that would tear her life apart. As her business flourished, so did the cracks in her personal life, cracks that were invisible to most, but that would ultimately lead to the tragedy that no one saw coming. But before we get to that dark and heartbreaking moment, We need to understand who Tiara really was. To understand what was lost. She wasn't just a woman, a mother, or a business owner. She was a symbol of possibility, of hope, of love that knew no boundaries. She had the world at her feet, a future that gleamed with promise. And that promise was taken from her far too soon. As we move forward in this documentary, we'll explore not only Tiara's life but also the ripple effect of her death, the devastation it caused, the lives it shattered, and the lessons we can all learn from her tragic story. This is more than just a tale of one woman's life cut short. It's a powerful reminder of the dangers that lurk beneath the surface of seemingly perfect relationships, the darkness that can creep in when jealousy and insecurity go unchecked. Stay with us as we continue to unravel the heart-wrenching events that led to the untimely loss of Tiara Williams, and as we examine how we might prevent such tragedies in the future. Through her story, we will uncover crucial lessons that could save lives and change the way we view unhealthy relationships forever. It began like many relationships do, an undeniable connection, a spark between two people who seemed destined to meet. Tiara first met 25-year-old Jeremy Williams in late 2017. At first glance he seemed like the perfect match for her. Jeremy, with his smooth charm and seemingly unwavering support for her dreams, made Tiara feel seen, valued, and adored. For Tiara, it felt like a fairy tale, a love story with a partner who would stand beside her, encouraging her every step of the way. In the early days of their relationship, Jeremy was everything Tiara needed. He expressed admiration for her ambition, her entrepreneurial spirit, and her fierce dedication to her family. They quickly became inseparable, moving through life's milestones with a sense of shared purpose. When their courtship moved swiftly, it seemed only natural. The couple made plans, built dreams, and with each passing day, Tiara became more and more confident that she had found someone who would truly support her. Jeremy was her partner in everything, someone who celebrated her successes without hesitation, or so it appeared. By September 2018, their love story took its next step: marriage. The wedding was everything Tiara had hoped for and more. She radiated happiness as she stood at the altar, her smile lighting up the entire room, her eyes locked with Jeremy's in a shared moment of pure joy. The vows they exchanged promised forever, and Tiara felt certain that the future was bright. Their wedding was a beautiful celebration, surrounded by friends, family, and loved ones, all of whom watched in awe as Tiara and Jeremy embarked on this new chapter together. Social media posts from the event were filled with hashtags, photos, and glowing captions, painting a picture of a life full of love, success, and happiness. In that moment, it seemed as though there was nothing that could stand in the way of their perfect life. But beneath the surface, something began to shift. The initial harmony that once characterized their relationship started to crack, slowly and quietly at first. As Tiara's daycare business grew and flourished, so did the undercurrent of tension that Jeremy seemed to harbor. It wasn't obvious at first, just subtle signs that something wasn't quite right. But those who knew Tiara well began to notice. Jeremy's initial support began to turn into something darker: jealousy. It wasn't just a fleeting emotion, it was an overwhelming force that seemed to take hold of him. As Tiara's business success continued to skyrocket, Jeremy's insecurity grew. What was once admiration for her accomplishments soon turned into resentment. He couldn't stand to see her receive praise for her work, especially when it came from people outside of their shared circle. Her achievements, which had once been a source of pride for both of them, now seemed to trigger something deeper in Jeremy, something that had been festering beneath the surface. The praise, the attention, the recognition, all of it began to feel like a threat to him, a threat to his place in her life. Friends who had once seen Jeremy as the supportive partner began to notice the subtle changes in his behavior. He was no longer the man who stood proudly by Tiara's side at every event, every celebration. Instead, he became distant, uncomfortable in social situations where Tiara was the center of attention. His eyes would narrow whenever someone complimented her, and his smile became strained as if he were putting on a facade. For Tiara, this was the first real sign that something had shifted. She had always been confident in herself and her abilities, but now she began to question her every move. The warmth she once felt in their shared moments was beginning to fade, replaced by an unease that crept into every interaction. As the months went on, the tension between them grew. Jeremy's jealousy didn't just stay in the background, it became impossible to ignore. What had once been a gentle breeze of insecurity turned into a storm of possessiveness. He questioned almost everything about her, the hours she spent nurturing her business, despite knowing how crucial they were to its success. He began to monitor her interactions with daycare parents, accusing her of being too friendly with the male clients. The accusations were baseless, but they became more frequent, more intense, as if he was searching for reasons to distrust her. It wasn't just about her success anymore, it was about control. What started as an innocent comment here and there turned into constant scrutiny, into a never-ending cycle of suspicion. Tiara tried to explain, tried to reassure him that her commitment to their marriage and their family had never wavered, but it didn't matter. Jeremy's jealousy was a monster that couldn't be appeased. The more Tiara worked to address his concerns, the more they seemed to spiral out of control. Her confidence, once a defining feature, began to erode. Friends who had once admired Tiara's boldness now saw her retreat into herself. She became more reserved, quieter in social settings, her vibrant personality dimming under the weight of Jeremy's growing emotional control. It was as though she had to walk on eggshells, always careful not to provoke his insecurities, always striving to maintain the delicate balance of their marriage. The woman who once walked with her head held high now found herself second-guessing every move she made. The toxic atmosphere at home was palpable, a constant undercurrent of tension that couldn't be ignored. But Tiara, ever the strong woman, didn't give up. She continued to run her daycare with the same passion and dedication, refusing to let her personal struggles affect the children she cared for so deeply. She continued to love her daughter, to cherish her family, but inside, a quiet storm was raging, one that she was desperately trying to keep under control. What Tiara didn't know, however, was that the storm was only just beginning. The cracks in her marriage were deepening and soon, they would be impossible to repair. The love she had once shared with Jeremy was slowly being overtaken by something darker, something that would ultimately lead to a tragedy no one saw coming. As we reflect on the escalating tension in Tiara and Jeremy's relationship, it's impossible to ignore the subtle yet powerful warning signs that began to emerge. What would you do if you noticed your partner starting to display some questionable behaviors like jealousy, control, or possessiveness, behaviors that could lead to something much darker, even domestic violence? Would you stay and try to sort things out, hoping that things would improve with time and communication? Or would you leave the relationship, knowing that the pattern of controlling behavior was a red flag for something much worse? We want to hear from you. What would you do in that situation? Share your answer in the comments below. Your perspective could help others who might be struggling with similar challenges, and together we can learn how to recognize these warning signs before they escalate. The day before the tragedy was like any other. June 4, 2022, began with the sun rising over Franklin, Kentucky, casting a soft, golden light on the small town. The Williams family appeared to be enjoying a peaceful evening. Tiara was, as always, juggling the demands of her growing daycare business while trying to give her young daughter, Amiri, the love and attention she deserved. Her day had been filled with moments of joy, laughter with her daughter, phone calls with parents who trusted her to care for their children, and the usual hustle of managing a thriving business. For Tiara, life was a delicate balance, but it was a balance she had mastered over the years. Amiri, her 10-month-old daughter, was a constant reminder of what Tiara worked for, the reason she woke up each day with purpose, determination, and hope for the future. Tiara had always dreamed of being a great mother, a provider, and an inspiration. In the soft light of the evening, with Amiri nestled close to her, Tiara looked like any other young mother, full of love, full of life, full of promise. But beneath the surface, the tension that had been building in her marriage was beginning to fester, and on that quiet Sunday evening, neither Tiara nor anyone else could have predicted the horror that would unfold just hours later. As the night went on, the couple seemed to settle into what had become their routine. Tiara preparing for another busy week at the daycare, Jeremy seemingly quiet but present. Yet, the silence between them wasn't filled with peace, it was filled with something more ominous. The growing rift between them had begun to consume their home, yet Tiara, ever the optimist, continued on as though everything was fine. She had no choice but to keep moving forward, for Amiri, for her business, and for herself. But as dawn broke on June 5, 2022, everything changed. The serenity of the early morning was shattered by the unmistakable sound of gunshots, loud, rapid, echoing through the quiet neighborhood of Patton Road. At approximately 6:30 a.m., the peaceful air was replaced with the terror of a community torn apart. Neighbors, groggy from sleep, were abruptly awakened, their minds racing to comprehend what they had just heard. Within moments, frantic calls to 911 flooded the lines. Gunshots, coming from the Williams house, one caller said, their voice trembling with disbelief. Police arrived at the scene just minutes later, their hearts heavy with the weight of what they knew they might find. What greeted them in that quiet home, where only hours before a young mother had been caring for her child, was a scene that would haunt the community for years to come. Tiara Williams, the young entrepreneur who had built her business from the ground up, lay lifeless in her home. She had been shot multiple times, her life snatched away by the man who had promised to love and protect her. The brutality of the act was incomprehensible, and the questions began to swirl. How could this happen? How could a loving husband, a man who had once supported his wife's ambitions, turn into someone capable of taking her life? The police immediately began their investigation, but the answers would not come easily. Jeremy Williams, Tiara's husband, had fled the scene, leaving behind a trail of confusion and disbelief. Authorities quickly launched a manhunt to locate Jeremy. They knew the situation was dire. As the search intensified, there was a chilling realization that the tragedy was far from over. Hours later, at a distance from the Williams home, authorities discovered Jeremy's vehicle on Interstate 65, just outside Franklin. Inside the car, they found him, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The man who had once vowed to protect Tiara, the man who had once been her partner in building a future together, had ended his life, leaving behind a trail of destruction, heartbreak, and unanswered questions. The shock and devastation of the murder-suicide reverberated throughout Franklin, Kentucky. The news spread quickly, sending waves of disbelief through the tight-knit community. The vibrant young woman who had built her dreams on love, hard work, and dedication was gone. The mother who had nurtured her daughter, the businesswoman who had poured her heart into creating a safe space for children, and the woman who had brought light to her community was no more. Tiara's family was left reeling, struggling to comprehend how this tragedy could have occurred. Her mother, Lakeisha MCC, had lost not just her daughter but her best friend. The pain was overwhelming. Lakeisha, who had been so proud of Tiara's accomplishments, now had to come to terms with the unfathomable loss of her child. Tiara's father, Terry Prince, too, was at a loss for words. His daughter had been a shining light in his life, and now that light was extinguished. The most heartbreaking aspect was the fate of their 10-month-old daughter Amiri, who was now left without both parents. The pain wasn't limited to her immediate family. Tiara had been a beloved figure in her community. Her daycare had touched the lives of so many families. Parents who had entrusted Tiara with their children were devastated by the loss. They had seen firsthand her commitment, her love for the children she cared for, and the dedication she had shown to every family that walked through her doors. The daycare wasn't just a business to Tiara. It was a part of her, and in losing her, the community lost more than just a businesswoman. They lost a part of their fabric. Tiara's church family, too, was shaken to its core. Tiara had been an active member of the praise and worship team at Harvester Warehouse Pentecostal Church, where her voice had once lifted the spirits of the congregation. The church community, who had watched Tiara grow into a young woman of faith and service, now mourned the loss of someone who had been so integral to their lives. The murder-suicide sent shockwaves through Franklin, Kentucky, but it also served as a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in even the most seemingly perfect of relationships. Tiara's death wasn't just a tragic loss for her family, it was a wake-up call to a much larger, darker reality that far too many people are forced to face. The whispers of jealousy, insecurity, and control that had quietly festered beneath the surface of Tiara and Jeremy's marriage now became all too clear. What had once seemed like a perfect love story had unraveled into a nightmare, one that would change the course of their lives forever. As the dust began to settle in the wake of this tragedy, the community was left with more questions than answers. How had things gone so terribly wrong? What signs had been missed? And most heartbreakingly, what could have been done to prevent this loss of a vibrant, promising life? In the wake of Tiara's tragic death, it's impossible to ignore the red flags that were present long before the final, irreversible act. The warning signs of controlling behavior, often dismissed or overlooked, are critical to recognize, especially when they emerge early in a relationship. For Tiara, these signs were subtle at first. A jealous glance, a questioning comment, a whispered concern about her late hours at work. But over time, these small instances snowballed into an environment of emotional manipulation, where her every action was scrutinized, and her every success was met with discomfort. One of the earliest warning signs of controlling behavior is jealousy. Jealousy may seem harmless in the beginning, like a natural reaction to a partner's interactions with others. But when it crosses the line into constant questioning or baseless accusations, it becomes something much darker. Jeremy's suspicions about Tiara's interactions with daycare parents, specifically male clients, were not based on any real evidence, yet they were persistent and intense. These accusations, though unfounded, created a space where Tiara was constantly on edge, forced to explain herself in ways that eroded her self-confidence. Another sign of controlling behavior is discomfort with a partner's success, especially when it makes the other person feel threatened. Tiara's business success, her ability to juggle a thriving daycare business with being a loving mother, should have been a source of pride for Jeremy. Instead, her accomplishments became a point of contention. Rather than celebrate her achievements, he resented them. He felt overshadowed by her success, and instead of supporting her, he began to view her as a rival. His jealousy was no longer limited to interactions with other people. It was aimed at the very essence of who Tiara was, her independence, her strength, and her ability to thrive in ways he couldn't. As Tiara's business grew, so did the tension in her marriage. Every moment of praise, every new milestone, was met with Jeremy's discomfort. He became possessive of her time and attention, questioning her motivations, even when she had done nothing wrong. These early signs of jealousy and control, if recognized and addressed, could have been the difference between life and death. But Tiara, like many victims of controlling relationships, tried to manage the situation, to placate her partner and keep the peace. She reassured him, tried to explain, but in doing so, she unknowingly allowed the cycle of control to tighten its grip. This is where early intervention becomes so crucial. The sooner controlling behaviors are recognized, the better chance there is to intervene before things escalate to violence. Domestic abuse, whether physical or emotional, doesn't happen overnight. It builds, piece by piece, often in the form of subtle manipulations that only those closest to the victim can notice. And too often, these behaviors are dismissed as just jealousy or a lover's concern. But the truth is, these are the early stages of a much more dangerous pattern. If left unchecked, they can escalate into physical violence, emotional destruction, and, as we saw in Tiara's case, tragic loss. The key to early intervention is education. We must teach people, especially young women and men, what healthy relationships look like. We must emphasize that jealousy is not love, and control is not care. We must encourage open communication and trust building in relationships, while also making it clear that emotional abuse is just as harmful as physical abuse. Recognizing these behaviors early can save lives, prevent suffering, and ultimately stop the cycle of violence before it starts. But education alone isn't enough. Cultural norms around possessiveness and control need to be challenged on a broader scale. For too long, society has normalized certain behaviors in relationships, labeling them as passion or protectiveness. These cultural narratives have enabled toxic behavior to go unchecked, often leaving victims feeling trapped, isolated, and without the tools to recognize or escape from abusive situations. The idea that a partner should control another's actions, decisions, or even success is not love, it's manipulation, and it must be called out. There is also a desperate need for better resources and support systems for those in toxic relationships. Too many victims suffer in silence, unsure of where to turn or who to trust. Shelters, counseling services, and helplines are often underfunded and overburdened, leaving many individuals feeling abandoned by the very systems meant to protect them. Communities must step up and provide the necessary resources, whether through local support groups, mental health professionals, or public awareness campaigns, to give those in dangerous situations a lifeline. The reality is, if Tiara had had access to the right support or been able to recognize the signs early enough, her fate might have been different. But without the tools, resources, or education, she was left to navigate a volatile and dangerous relationship on her own. In many ways, Tiara's story is a reflection of a larger, systemic issue, an issue that affects countless women and men every day. But through Tiara's legacy, we have the opportunity to change the narrative. We can use her tragic death as a catalyst for change, to open conversations about unhealthy relationships, to challenge the cultural norms that enable possessiveness and control, and to ensure that victims of emotional and physical abuse are given the help they need before it's too late. As we reflect on Tiara's heartbreaking story, it's clear that the warning signs of controlling behavior can often be difficult to recognize until it's too late. Have you ever noticed behaviors in a relationship that seemed harmless at first but later made you feel uncomfortable? Do you know someone who has experienced jealousy or possessiveness in their relationship, even when there was no reason for suspicion? What about the times when someone's success or accomplishments were met with discomfort or resentment from their partner? Did it make you pause and wonder about the dynamics in that relationship? Have you or someone close to you been questioned repeatedly about your whereabouts or the people you interact with? What impact did that have on your sense of trust and independence? It's important to talk about these warning signs, and your voice could make a difference. Share your experiences in the comments below, whether it's something you've witnessed in your own life or the life of someone you care about. Your story could help others recognize similar patterns and take action before it's too late. Tiara's story teaches us some vital lessons, but we want to hear from you. What have you learned from her story? What advice would you give to someone who might be going through something similar? Your thoughts might provide the insight that someone else needs to hear. Let's come together to raise awareness, share our experiences, and help others learn from what we've seen. Your engagement could save a life. Tiara's death left a void that could never truly be filled. Her impact on her community, through her daycare, her church, and her family, continues to resonate. As a mother, entrepreneur, and community member, Tiara inspired countless others, especially young mothers and women entrepreneurs, to chase their dreams with resilience and dedication. Her legacy lives on in the children she nurtured, the family she supported, and the example she set. Even in her absence, her story continues to inspire, reminding us of the importance of love, ambition, and community. We encourage you to share your thoughts and experiences on recognizing unhealthy behaviors in relationships. Your voice could help others avoid the same fate. Let's also support initiatives aimed at preventing domestic violence and empowering women in business. Tiara's story can be a catalyst for change, but only if we act together. Tiara's story is a heartbreaking reminder of how unchecked jealousy and controlling behavior can destroy lives. As we continue to honor her memory, it's crucial that we focus on prevention, recognizing the signs of emotional abuse before they turn fatal. By learning from Tiara's story in similar cases, we can work to stop domestic violence in its tracks and help others recognize unhealthy patterns before it's too late. Tiara's legacy lives on through her family, her community, and the lessons learned from her tragic end. If Tiara's story has impacted you, please like and share this video to raise awareness and help others recognize the warning signs in their relationships. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more important content that can make a difference. Together, we can break the silence and create a safer future for all.